Hi there. I hope you're doing well. So in this video today, I'm going to walk you through a very basic and simple tutorial on coding HTML for a web page. So if you're coming to this video with the explicit purpose of learning HTML, you will learn a little bit of information, especially if you know nothing about HTML. But I must say that the main purpose of this video is to relax you. So you notice I'm speaking in a very low voice. And so this is going to be very slow, monotonous video with some relaxing keyboard sounds. And its purpose is just to relax you and maybe help you fall asleep, and hopefully it will be pleasant for you. So you'll notice on this page I have a basic text document. So what this is the first portion of the first chapter of Pride and Prejudice. So we're going to mark up this page with HTML, okay? And if you'll notice, I have this text document open in my web browser, and as it is, you'll see it'll render the text okay, but the text is not structured at all. It's just a big mess of text across the page, and is not very easy to read. Okay. So even just basic text, a web browser will display it, but it won't look very pretty. So any page, any web page that you're looking at is generally going to be a combination of a few different types of coding. You have the HTML, the CSS, and JavaScript. So HTML is a markup language, which means that what it does is that it structures the text for the web browser parser. So it basically marks out bits of text that have certain semantic elements, the semantic elements of the text. So for example, it'll mark out headers, titles of things. It will mark out sections of text. It will denote what things are links to other pages. It will denote where images are and things like that. So it basically structures the document into logical bits that the web browser can make sense of, and also search engines. So search engines will use these semantic elements that are defined by the HTML to make sense of what bits of the document are more important than others, and what are the sections of the page, and so on. So the HTML marks out the semantic elements of the page, while the CSS tells the web browser what these different elements will look at. So as far as defining fonts and colors and things like that, I mean, CSS is much more complicated than just the fonts and the colors, but in general the CSS defines what all the different elements within the page look like. And JavaScript is a scripting language or programming language that basically does things on the page. So when you click on a button and the button causes a pop-up window to appear, that's JavaScript, for example. So for the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to be working with some basic HTML, just to kind of get you a feel for how it works and what it looks like, and get you started with some basic formatting, okay? So let us get started with that. So first of all, we're going to wrap this entire piece of text within the HTML tag. So all of HTML is made up of tags, and there are generally opening tags and closing tags for each element. So the top level tag for any HTML document is the HTML tag. So the beginning of the tag is basically a, what is that, a less than sign, HTML, and then a greater than sign. So that's the opening tag. So we want to wrap the entire bit within the HTML tag so that the browser knows, hey, this entire bit of text is HTML. So at the very end of the document, we're going to put the closing tag. So the closing tag is very similar to the opening tag, except we have this little forward slash at the beginning. And that's the closing tag. Okay, so that just basically tells the browser that all of this text here is HTML. If we go back to our page and refresh it, you'll see it doesn't really make much of a difference to the page, the way it looks, and that's fine, okay. But this is step one. Now what we're going to do is mark out a couple of headers in the document. So generally the headers go from a top level, first level header, I think all the way down to a 6th level header. I think that's the lowest level it will go to. So the first level header is basically, usually defined as the title of a page and is the most important header, right? And as you go down to the second level and third level, it kind of defines lower level headings that mark out, smaller sections of a document. And when a search engine looks at a page, it knows to weigh the higher level headers as sort of more important than the lower level headers as far as telling the search engine what the document is about. Okay, so it knows that the first level header is the title of the page and will give us, the most information about what the document is about. Okay, so we'll wrap this, the title of our page in the H1 header. So that's our highest level header. Okay, and then we'll save it, and then we'll go back to our browser and we'll refresh it, and you'll see now that it's taken that header and it's made it much bigger than the rest of the text, and kind of puts a space in between the header and the rest of the text. So you'll notice that, well, I did say that HTML does not define what the page looks like in the end. The browser does have default ways of rendering all of these different elements. So the top level header it's going to make bigger than the rest of the page. But then you can use CSS to further kind of make that look exactly what you want it to look like. If you want to define, a different font or make it a different size, you can do that. And our chapter will be a second level heading. So we're just basically making an outline of the document that the web browser will understand. Okay, so if we go back here and refresh the page again, okay, you'll see that the second level header is also bigger than the rest of the text, but not as big as the first level. Okay, all right. So now our page is starting to look like a real document rather than just a mess of text as we're structuring it. All right. So now what we have to do for the rest of this document is mark out all of these different paragraphs. So we mark every paragraph within a paragraph tag. So a paragraph tag is just the letter P. So there's our opening tag for this paragraph here. And then we're going to close it off with the closing tag. Okay, and then we'll save it. And let's refresh it. And looky there, now we have our first paragraph. So what it does is it breaks this paragraph off from the rest of the text, puts some space in between it. All right, so let's do that with the rest of our text. Oh, didn't mean to, I think I have my caps lock on. Okay, there we go. And if you have a lot of content and a lot of pages, all of this marking up can be a little tedious. And there are text editors and other applications that can make this go a bit faster. But honestly, I don't mind it generally because I feel like I have a lot of control over the code when I manually, mark everything up by hand. But of course, if I have a lot to do, then I do want to take some shortcuts. But there is something very satisfying about hand coding everything. Okay, and that didn't take too long, did it? So we've marked out all of our paragraphs, and if we move that back to our page and refresh it, you'll see all of our paragraphs are marked out. So looky there. So we took this mess of text and we made it look more like a book, right? So it's much easier to read. Right now, it's not too pretty, right? We can make it prettier, but we can see that it is easier to read and makes more sense. Okay, so let's do a few more things with this page. I'm going to show you a couple other things as far as marking up the text. I'll show you how to bold and how to italicize. So to bold text, you're going to wrap some text within the strong tag. So it's just strong opening tag, strong closing tag. So all of the text within this tag will be bolded. Now, technically speaking, this isn't really a bolding tag. What it really is doing is denoting a piece of text as having a very strong emphasis. So the default way that the browser renders this strong tag is by bolding it, but you can use CSS to change the way that it renders the strong tag. You can make it a different color, for example. You can make it bright red instead of bolded. And that goes with pretty much any HTML tag. Okay, so we'll refresh it and we'll see that this piece of text is bolded. Okay, and let's do the same thing with italicizing. So I'll italicize this beginning of a paragraph. So we use the EM tag or the emphasis tag to italicize some text. So again, okay, let's refresh. So again, the default way that the browser will render an emphasized text is to italicize it, but you can change the way that it does this. You can change it to a different color or a different size if you want to instead, using CSS. Okay, so now we've bolded some stuff, we've italicized some stuff. So let's make a link. So a web page wouldn't be much of a web page without links, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link the title of this page to the IMDb page relating to the BBC miniseries. So here's the page with the BBC miniseries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this link, and then I'm going to make this into a hyperlink. So I'm going to do this using the A tag, which defines hyperlinks or defines links or anchors within a page. So defining a hyperlink, you use the href property to do that. So type in href equals a quote mark, and then I'm going to paste my URL. I'm going to close it in another quotation mark and then the rest of the opening tag. So that defines the hyperlink here. So if you are linking to a page that's outside of your website, you want to make sure to include this whole bit https:// in your URL. Otherwise, if you leave this off, it's going to think that this file or this location lives within your web page, and it will go looking for it within your web page's file structure. Okay, which is fine if your page is actually within your own web page's file structure, but if it's not, if it's outside of your website, then you'll want to include this bit so it knows to look outside of your website. Okay, so that's important. So here we have the opening tag. if we leave off the closing tag, you'll see what happens real quick. It will make the entire page one long hyperlink, which isn't what we want, right? We just want this little bit. So it's important to remember your closing tag. And the closing tag for this element is just the slash and the A. Okay, so I'm going to save this again, and we're going to go over here. We're going to refresh, and look. Okay, we have our link here. And if we click on it, it takes us to our web page, and so we know it works. Okay, so that's exciting. We have our first link. All right. So I'm going to show you one last thing here. We're going to add an image to our page, okay? So let me find. So if we look at our, where is it? Okay. If we look at where this HTML file lives, you'll see I also have this image within the same folder of Mr. Darcy. He is so handsome. Okay. So we want to put that image of Mr. Darcy right here underneath the H1 tag, or underneath the first header. So the element we're going to use is the image element, so it's img, and then we have to tell the browser where that image lives that we're going to be pulling in. Okay, so that we're going to use this source property here. So src equals, and then a quotation mark, and then we're going to put the location of the image file. So since it's right in the same folder that our HTML file is at, we just can put the name of the file. Okay, nothing fancy. Now, if this image lived in another folder within our website's directory, we would have to tell it where that folder is and where the image was. So we would say something like folder /Darcy. So for example, if we had a folder named folder and the image lived in that, then we would specify that. Okay, but for now, since it's in the same folder as our HTML file is in, we don't have to worry about that. We just can put the name of the image. So I'm going to save that, go back and refresh, and there's Mr. Darcy. So you'll notice it doesn't do anything fancy with this image. It just kind of puts the image as it is. If we wanted to resize the image or put it to the left or the right of the page or center it in the page, we would have to use CSS to kind of further define what that image is going to look like within the page. But for the purposes of this tutorial, we're just smacking it right in the middle of this page, and without any further specifying what else it should do. So here we go. We have this nice page. It's structured. It has a nice picture. It's not super fancy. Okay, so if we wanted to make it prettier, we would use some CSS to make it a little prettier. And if you all like this tutorial, I can make another one that will take this page and then add some CSS to it to change the font and the color, and maybe we can add a menu that links to all the other chapters in the book. Make a little menu on the left-hand side, or something like that, and make it a little nicer to look at. But you can see we've done a lot with this what we started out with, right? So we structured the text, we made some text bolded, and we italicized some text, we added a pretty picture, we added a hyperlink, and so in doing this, I've kind of shown you the very basics of HTML. Now if we were to do this properly, for example, we would add a header up here before our main body that would kind of tell us more about the page, like what the title of the page is and stuff like that. And now that I think about it, I probably should have enclosed this in the body tag. So the main body of the page is enclosed in what's called a body tag, and this is separate from, say, the header tag. I probably should have added that, but it doesn't really change how it looks here, but it does tell the browser where the main bit of HTML that's going to show on the page is. So I didn't add that, but I should have. Okay. But so there you go. So if you didn't know anything about HTML before this, you should know a little bit now. And it should be something, you know, enough to get you started. And in the future, I might put together some more tutorials that go further into detail. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.